excited because I'm always excited. I know I start every episode with saying I'm super excited, but that's literally my default setting. I can't help it. Shut up. Leave me alone. Anyhow, today we're gonna be we had a friend made this awesome post that was about the feminine gaze and like some deep stuff that I didn't pick up on, and I was so intrigued that I had to do a whole episode on it. So I got some awesome experts here, and we are going to be talking female gaze here on the high ground. Oh. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the high ground. How's it going?
Hi.
Hey. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Yeah, so we have two new guests. Everyone else has been here or on adjacent podcasts in other capacities, but I'm still excited to talk and get everyone's point of view. I'm going to start by going around the room and kind of asking, who are you? Where can we find your awesome content? And man, today is Last Jedi Day. There's been so much love in the community towards this film that I'm just like I'm loving it. So I got to ask, what is your favorite experience in the community? And we will start with Miss Eggy on this.
Sure, of course. Thank you so much for having me back on. Rhonda, Kiki, it is so nice to finally meet you guys in person-ish and get to talk to you. I was so excited about this. And also, I did not know, Brandon, that you were going to have girls with sabers on here. I love them.
Oh gosh.
This is such a treat. I saw the icon. I had to kind of contain myself. I was so happy. So this is just going to be great. So my name, I go by Miss Eggy on TikTok, Miss Eggy28 on Twitter, and I just kind of post whatever I want. It's mostly Star Wars stuff and kind of nerd adjacent stuff, but I mean, it depends. Sometimes I'm in the mood to talk about Dune. Sometimes I'm in the mood to talk about, Anakin for the 50th time. Who knows? Sometimes it's it's just whatever I'm in the mood for. But
sometimes it's Vegeta thirst.
Yeah, Vegeta thirst. I am like. It was funny. I was at a con this weekend and I bought like a sweatshirt from a girl and it was like a Vegeta sweatshirt and we talked about his butt for like 10 minutes. And then I went back there the next day in costume because a friend of mine who wasn't there was like, "Oh, I liked that, sweatshirt you got. Can you get me one?" I said, "Sure." I went back there in costume and I was like, "Oh, I don't know if you remember me. I was here yesterday." And the girl was like, "Yeah, we talked about Vegeta's butt for 10 minutes." I'm like, "Yeah, that was me." So, so I definitely, I guess made an impression, right? But yeah, so I'm really excited to be here today to talk about the female gaze in Star Wars. It's going to be great. And Brandon, you had what's my favorite experience in the fandom when it comes to The Last Jedi? Like my favorite memory of The Last Jedi, or was it something else?
Well, I'm actually going to have you hold off for a second because sure. I'm looking at my chat right now.
Uh-oh.
Oh, okay. So half the people can see it, and not everyone. I'm trying to figure out. I don't know. This is the first time I've had this issues. I've had other adjacent issues. Okay. Huh. So it seems it set me up with like two separate live streams at the same time, which is
wow.
Oh dear.
Uh-oh.
And and they both have the same name, and one of them has 7 people watching, and the other one has 8 people watching.
Oh no.
Ah.
Okay.
It's me. I brought the struggles. I seem to bring them with me. It's like
someone in the chat says, "I have a bad feeling about this." Well played. Well played.
So we're almost okay. Here's here's the problem one. And I closed it, and hopefully those people, I put in there for people to switch and join over, and hopefully they will be able to do that. Okay.
Okay.
I sincerely apologize, Miss Eggy. Would you kind of mind starting over for anyone that was missing it?
Sure, no problem. I'll just speed through it. So my name is Miss Eggy. I go by Miss Eggy 28 on TikTok, Miss Eggy on TikTok, Miss Eggy 28 on Twitter. And I am in awe of all of the women here. Fangirling, of course, internally. And I'm really excited to be here to talk about the female gaze today in Star Wars. I think it's such serendipity that we're doing this with the Last Jedi anniversary that just rolled on by. So this is just, I had the realization the other day and I was like, this is going to be great. So I'm so excited to be here. Do you want me to do the question prompt or do you want to move?
Oh, no. You have to share your best experience still.
Okay. Best experience just like in the fandom or in relation to The Last Jedi?
In the fandom altogether.
Oh my God.
or whatever the question means to you. Whatever it means to you.
I guess I would just say just meeting all of you guys like on TikTok and online. And I kind of stepped away from the Star Wars fandom when I was in high school, years and years ago. And I kind of found my way back to it with the sequels and just like listening to everyone's different points of view and finding out what everyone else loves about Star Wars and then getting to share what I love about Star Wars, I think is the best thing about being in the fandom for sure.
Awesome. All right. I love it. I appreciate it. Let's go to M next.
Hello, I'm Emrys. I'm not on TikTok, but I am on YouTube on a channel called Girls with Sabers. I do podcasts and video essays with my friend and co-creator, Luthien. Luthien sadly could not make it tonight due to prior commitments, but she wants to say hello to everyone and she's sorry. But I am
There'll be other times for sure.
Yes, I asked Rhonda to come on my live stream to celebrate The Last Jedi, and then she told me that she was on the stream too, and you, everyone, and I was just so happy. I talked to her about the female gaze, and I showed her your video, Miss Becky, about the female gaze, the hands and the eyes, and I said, whenever I have someone ask me what the female gaze is, I'm like, to me, this is the best explanation. Watch this TikTok. Like when I saw that, I know this sounds emotional, but that's just the type of person I am. I literally cried because it was just so perfectly stated. Like, yes, it's the hands and eyes because nonverbal communication is so important to the female gaze, I think, or the feminine gaze. Feminine gaze is probably a better term. But yeah, so I'm just so happy to be with you here. I told Rhonda I was probably going to be starstruck, and I am.
That's crazy. That makes me so happy. Thank you. Oh my God. Thank you. Because I love you. I love everyone here. This is gonna be a big love stream, guys.
Yes. Hey, that's how we do it. That's how it's supposed to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know everyone else, but I'm fun and equal to meet you all. So equally fun is what I meant to say. I'm sorry. See, I'm already starstruck.
And that's actually one of the things I'm really trying to do, because a lot of this I have a lot of like TikTok creators on here and hopefully exposing to other people on TikTok and YouTube, but I'm also trying to bring in a bunch of Twitter people and other podcasts where I'm going to try to mix it up and just make it one big fandom. Hopefully it works. But how about you, Kiki?
Hello, everyone. I am Kiki. I am from the upper left United States of America, which is also the Pacific Northwest. I am on TikTok as Black PNW Lady. My topics usually are Star Wars, pop culture. If you've been following me at all, you will know that for like the last month, I've been on like this Bane from the Dark Knight Rises, like thirsty conversation. and it's gotten way out of control. And at this point, like, I have people in my comments being like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not okay. I'm not doing fine." So it led to a lot of chatter and conversations about the female gaze and all that fun stuff. So that's what I do. Sometimes I'm like doing deep analysis of like The Dark Knight Rises, and then the next video is I'm talking about how I would with Boba Fett. So you never know what you're getting. Just all over the place.
Oh, I've actually been loving you covering Scrubs recently.
Oh, yes.
No, that's been really cool. And what was your favorite moment in the community, Star Wars community?
The Star Wars community. There's a recent moment on TikTok. Chris, if anyone knows who Chris is, he's Star Wars lawyer. Somebody made a video that they were like, "Oh, these people are carrying the Star Wars fandom," and Chris jumped on and he was like, "There's more people carrying the fandom," and he put up all these diverse creators.
Oh, that's awesome!
Star Wars fandom, and it became a moment that actually extremely interconnected the Star Wars fandom, specifically the diversity within the Star Wars fandom. So that was
awesome. I love it. And last but certainly not least, we have Rhonda with a book.
Yes, so that is who I am. Thank you for answering that for me.
Sorry.
I am also on TikTok. I'm Rhonda Talks About Books, TOKS. And I do mostly talk about Jane Austen, but with some Star Wars sprinkled in. And then I'm also co-host a podcast called Pop DNA, where we talk about like the literary influences in all different pop culture and media. And that is on like all podcast platforms and now on YouTube as of like 6 weeks ago. So, all right. And my favorite experience in the community, I'm going to have to echo Ms. Eggy and just say in general, just being able to connect with other Star Wars fans and you know, talk about what we love and talk about, you know, like the deeper things, the deeper references that we see in Star Wars media and how that connects us and speaks to us as human beings. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. And I'm thinking, and I apologize, Amrance, did I get your favorite moment in the community?
Oh no, but that's okay. Mine is what we're doing right now. Just talking to Star Wars friends and hearing everyone's opinions. I love this right now.
Awesome.
I apologize for my black screen, but you know, girls will struggles again.
No, it's all good. It's all good. And that we've introduced, I'll be able to bring up some comments. We have Cal Forrest saying, "Is that an Eggie?" Yeah, we love it.
Hi, Cal. I miss you.
But yeah, from now on they'll pop up on the screen, and I mean, real talk, we have the absolute best people in the chat. So. Oh, also, very big point. Anyone in the chat who tries to spoil No Way Home or anything like that, you're just gonna be blocked from my channel forever. Because like, if you follow me and like we're cool, you know that's not cool, and I don't play like that. So like, that's a perma ban right there. Also, Brooke will personally come to your house and steal all of your forks. So.
And give them to the I can't remember Hawkeye's girl, the Hawkeye show. What is her name? Never mind.
Give them to Kate.
Give them to Kate. That's it.
Oh, you know what? Actually, I want to do this since we actually have such a cool group. Normally, I'm not taking questions right now, but Troy asked who your favorite, Star Wars. We'll just say Star Wars creators. If we can do a quick lightning round, just so that people can find other people to follow potentially. And I know Emrys, you're not on TikTok, so it could be anywhere. But
Oh.
lightning round, favorite Star Wars content creator, and I'll go to Kiki first. Throw her in the hot seat.
Oh my. Well, I already said Star Wars lawyer, so I'll have to come up with somebody else, won't I? I have
Oh.
last name, but Claudia
Oh, Claudia says is chaotic and amazing.
Claudia says on TikTok is wild and hilarious and deeply in love with Thrawn. So it's like some of the funniest stuff I watch.
Taste.
All right. How about you, Rhonda?
I have to shout out Star Wars English Class podcast. And also both of the hosts are on TikTok, Julia and Fern. For anyone who likes literary discussions of Star Wars.
Yeah, both of them are English teachers and awesome people. Also, you mentioned Claudia. She's part of the Rue Palps podcast, so you can check them out as well. How about you, Eggy?
Well, I was gonna say Star Wars lawyer, then I was gonna say Fern. I have to give a special shout out to Fern and Julia, of course. But I always call Fern my arch nemesis on TikTok. I love her so much because she's a big Jedi defender, and I just like her videos are so awesome. And I'm like very critical of the Jedi, so I always joke and say we're arch nemesis, arch nemesis. She's the best. She always makes me laugh. I'll give a shout out to Megs for sure. I love Megs. She is one of the most wholesome and positive, like I never want to push I sometimes I'm careful to say like, oh, they're so like wholesome and positive because I don't want to like kind of put them in a corner or kind of like put them in a box. But Meg's content always makes me smile. It's so warm. She just like seems like one of the most genuinely kind people on the internet, and she's me and her she's my Ray Stan buddy, and and I love her. She's the best.
I completely agree. Like, she's someone I became friends with because of how positive they were in my comment section. Like before they ever started making content,
Yeah.
They're just like, I don't know you, but I love you already. And how about you, Emrys?
I say mostly on YouTube. I love What the Force. I think MMC over there makes some incredible videos. For EU, 100% Star Wars. Luke over there is a lot of fun too. I learned so much from him about the extended universe that I never knew about. And then Blue Bantha Milk Co. is also a lot of fun. Love those guys over there.
Awesome. I love it. I appreciate it. I want to shout out. Well, first of all, we do have Fern in the chat who's saying
And Julia's in there too. I think I saw.
And Julia as well. Yeah. If you're interested in a really interesting narrative podcast, you should definitely check out Camilla Bodeko-Wookie here has Beings of the Galaxy, which is amazing. We have Brian of the Pink Milk podcast pops in here. Love Brian to death. And most importantly, I got to shout out my dyad, Element 7, who's in the chat here. And I'm a little offended. None of y'all said it, but that's cool.
I was just like, it's a given that everyone follows him, right?
I agreed. I was like, it's a given.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. He has a podcast called Diet in the Force, happens on Saturdays, and I hear his co-host is very handsome. Anyways, let's jump into it. I want to get into like what the feminine gaze is and what the male gaze is and why is it worth noting. And of course, what we want to do, open conversation. I want to hear everyone's thoughts, and feel free to I don't have to call on you, but I will if we're silent for a long time. But I'll ask Emrys to start.
Oh dear. I think at first it's important to note that femme gaze and male gaze is film terminology. And I think because when we talk about male gaze, it's usually in a negative sort of manner. So I just like to say right now, this is film. Like we all have masculine and feminine and part of ourselves. But male gaze is more looking from more of an objectifying nature. It was a literary or a film, a feminist theory device of when we look at film, we are usually looking through the male gazer, the objectifier, and when they look at women, they usually look at women as objects and not as people. And so we see this in movies all the time. Like a good example of that, the classic example is Alfred Hitchcock's, oh gosh, it just left my
Vertigo?
brain. Vertigo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Where she became the object of his desire. He had no desire to know her as a person, to have intimacy with her. And so that's the breaking point for me is femme gaze is more about not seeing a person, but knowing a person through intimacy. And what is that but The Last Jedi? The Last Jedi is not about skills or becoming a Jedi. It's more about Rey finding herself of who she is as a person first and foremost, and knowing her dyad, her other half, as a person first and foremost, not as a shell Kylo Ren, but who he is, the worst and the best of him, and the worst and the best of herself too. Sorry, that was too much.
No, it was perfect.
That was
Yeah.
beautiful. I mean, do everyone else what has want to elaborate on it?
I think, sorry, I didn't talk over anyone, did I? I think, like, when we talk about the male gaze, I know, like, most of what we want to talk about now is, like, the feminine gaze as opposed to the male gaze.
Yes.
But I think, like, understanding the male gaze, like, I think that we talk about it a lot in, like, popular culture and in kind of, like, general or like casual film discussion. Like we kind of all sort of know what the male gaze is, like on a surface level, but I think that we miss. So if for anyone who doesn't know, the term comes from an essay by Laura Mulvey called Visual Pleasure in Narrative Cinema.
Yes.
And you can find the PDF for free online if you want to read it. But a key component of the male gaze that Mulvey outlines is not just like the objectification of women within a film or within a narrative, but also the viewer identifying with a male protagonist is a key part of it. And so I think that is what I think like that's kind of like assumed, like the male gaze is in everything. I think as someone said at some point, the male gaze is in everything.
Yes.
So it's kind of assumed that we are identifying like that the audience is like presumed to be identifying with this male protagonist. And I think if we're going to think about it in the context of Star Wars, Luke Skywalker is like literally a self-insert character. George Lucas like modeled Luke Skywalker after himself, so he's designed to be projected onto, and we're very much intended to view the story through the gaze of Luke Skywalker. I don't know if we were supposed to get into that yet, but but yeah, just wanted to note that about the male gaze as well.
Another thing to add, which like it may have been mentioned, but I kind of got kicked off the stream for 5 seconds. Is that Mulvey does note, first of all, and I think it's very important for us to clarify this, that this is a heterosexual view.
Yes.
And I think that's very important to note, is that we are talking about male-female gaze. We are talking about a very limited scope of how one sees film. So this is not taking into account other identities outside of male and female. It's not taking into account other sexualities outside of heterosexual. Now
It's
that
also intertwined with like the white gaze.
yeah,
Yes,
that's what I was
yes.
about to say. This is very much written about whiteness, in my opinion. And Julia mentioned in the chat, but Bell Hooks passed away today. And Bell Hooks, one of her responses to this entire idea was to create something called the oppositional view. And the oppositional view is basically saying for Black women, we tend to not identify with this sort of thing because when we are in film, we are not necessarily the object of eroticism or pleasure or something in the same way that a white woman might be. So that's also something to note about the female male gaze. But that aside, something that I find very important when you talk about the female gaze, you need to talk about how the male gaze sees women as passive. And what I mean by that is that if you are looking at it through the traditional male gaze, usually the woman is not a very well-developed character within the story. She's not there to be a well-developed character, and in fact, Mulvey mentions that this is considered a threat if she starts doing things that make her more dimensional.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's and the first off, I didn't know that Bell Hooks passed away today. Wow. How old was she?
69.
Jesus. I Bell Hooks is just I started reading her work in college and just one of the she and Audre Lorde just kind of like really that was like the floodgates for me when examining like Black femininity and the Black feminine perspective. So that's absolutely heartbreaking. But yes, you guys are absolutely correct. I also feel it's important to point out that the female gaze as a concept is very abstract, like as you can see and as you can hear from everyone speaking about it, like it's a very abstract concept. So a lot of we're talking about sexuality, we're talking about agency, we're talking about development of female characters, we're talking about the lack of like viewing a story through the male perspective, through a male character being the male gaze. So there's a lot of different roads you can go down when examining this theory, and we'll probably get into a lot of those as we continue to talk. Also, two other quick things and we kind of mentioned it a little bit in the beginning, and I expect that a lot of us are coming at this with different perspectives and different opinions on a lot of different things. For me, my personal opinion is that when we talk about the male gaze, I don't think that the male gaze is inherently a bad thing.
Exactly, yeah.
I can certainly think of many examples of examples of it that I think are negative, but sometimes I think when we're talking about it, it's really easy to kind of put the like this is the bad one kind of stamp on it, and I just don't think that's particularly constructive. I don't
Yeah.
think that really adds much to the conversation. And it's more so that the male gaze just permeates. It's more kind of that. It's more like it's everywhere. It's in everything we see in film and television. And I don't think that, it's all about, here's my Libra coming out. It's all about balance. It's like if you watch only movies where, if you're only watching James Bond movies and, Michael Bay's Transformers series and those types of stories that really, and I love James Bond movies. Like no shade to James Bond. I'm a huge fan. But if you're only watching those types of films that objectify women and don't allow them to develop and are strictly kind of firmly planted in the male perspective, it's going to skew how you view women in real life. It's going to skew that. But if you have a healthy balance of of the male gaze, of the femme gaze, of different perspectives and a filmography that is rooted in diverse perspectives and opinions and directors and genders, then you're going to come out totally fine. It's all about having a balance of everything. And the other quick point I want to make is that I'm so flattered that that, and it's Mel, right? Is it Mel?
Emrys.
And Emrys, sorry, my apologies. Emrys, I am so flattered that you loved my video on the female gaze. That just warms my
Yes.
heart. But it should be noted that was, that's a 60-second video. And I always tell people who compliment me on it, like, or when I get nice comments, I'm like, this is a jumping off point. Like,
Yes.
this is so jumping off. Like, this is like, and I remember I pinned my last comment. I was like, the dialogue and the conversation has developed so much since after I posted this video, and it's only maybe about a year ago. Like, the conversation has changed. Like, please, don't let this be your only kind of exposure to the concept of the female gaze. There are so many other perspectives from women of color, from queer women, and I am queer, but other queer women, and and also non-binary people, I do think can be involved in this conversation. I think when we talk about the male gaze and the female gaze, it's really easy to kind of lose the non-binary perspective, because non-binary people have feminine and masculine in them as well. And I think that their opinions should be absolutely voiced here. So there's that. And also, this is just a disclaimer for everybody who's watching this. We're talking about a lot of things tonight. We're talking about sexuality, and so this conversation might get a little spicy, might get a little, so just prepare for that. We might be talking about lightsabers, and we also might be talking about lightsabers. So, just heads up for everybody, like, just heads up for everyone, just the conversation might take a turn. So don't be surprised if we start talking about that type of stuff.
Well,
thank you.
And I certainly,
we finally got a woman who got to have a lightsaber. I think that's
yes.
a lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then real quick, I just want to, shout out. Like, I have Dan the Man in chat saying, put some respect on Michael Bay's Transformers. Never thought all women were like Megan Fox. And like, I want to make sure everyone is aware that, we're looking through like subjective thoughts about film, and just getting these different ideas, because a lot of stuff isn't what I noticed, because I grew up with everything looking at it like through the James Bond lens. If I'm hearing everyone correctly, and I apologize, this is not me attempting to mansplain, this is me trying to like put this in perspective. If the character can be replaced by a cheeseburger, it's male gaze.
Or a breakfast sandwich, like in Birds of Prey.
I don't know. The breakfast sandwich seemed a lot more intimate.
It was.
But if it I'm just like, oh no, I looked at a cheeseburger like that like 3 days ago, and I don't know. That's how at least I'm putting it in my head.
I like that analogy. I've never heard that, but that's really good.
That is really good.
Yeah.
It's not wrong.
It's not wrong.
Not wrong.
Camilla asks, I'm curious to hear what these awesome guests have to say about the female gaze in animation, aka Jennifer Corbett running The Bad Batch.
Oh.
Any thoughts on that?
I just talked for way too long. Someone else go.
I mean, because I don't even know who has seen all of The Bad Batch.
I've seen
I
it.
haven't. Oh,
The Bad Batch, I might get some flack for this, but The Bad Batch wasn't my most favorite Star Wars story. But what was the question again, though? I get easily distracted.
Oh, no, I was just asking. It was something that Camilla had asked about. Having Jennifer Corbett be the person running The Bad Batch, if there was examples of feminine gaze in Bad Batch that were notable or noteworthy. And also, real quick, I want to shout out my buddy here at the Comic Binge. I actually just recorded with him It's Paul Herman. One of the very first podcasts I listened to for Star Wars was called Blaster Cannon, and that was his. Like, his and a couple awesome creators like 5 years ago, and so there were some really cool people that I thought about that made me want to start making content. So I got to shout out my buddy real quick. But yeah, no, if there's nothing that stands out, that's totally cool, and we can jump into
I mean,
the thick
the
of it.
only thing I would say about the Bad Batch, first of all, I would say that everybody benefits from the female gaze.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody benefits within the story. And the female gaze pushes and requires all characters to be well developed.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're thinking about the female gaze and you're looking at the Bad Batch, one thing I would say off the top of my head is that all of the male characters in the Bad Batch, they have their own personality. They have a collective goal, although one of my biggest critiques of the Bad Batch was that I always was kind of trying to figure out what the long-term goal of the Bad Batch was, but there are goals. The goal is survive. And they all are able to build connections to someone else in some shape or form. And that's something very important to know.
Okay.
I'm not sure if anyone else is hearing it, but I'm hearing like a loud feedback.
Yeah, I'm getting some noise. I do think it might be coming from M side. I don't know if there's a fan on you or something like that.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
There we
That
go.
was me. I apologize again. I bring the struggle in. That's my specialty. But yeah, I didn't finish the Bad Batch. I still need to see the last 3 episodes. But I think we all paused because there's very few Star Wars that I can think of that is told through a femme gaze, and that's one of the reasons we love The Last Jedi so much. It is because of that. I wish I could find an example of the femme gaze in the Bad Batch and in the Mandalorian, and to me it's very one point of view, and that's one of the things that our critics of femme gaze will tell you is there are some filmmakers who are just sick of that term, male gaze, femme gaze, because they think that there should be no one gaze. It should be one diverse gaze. That's a whole other discussion, but there it is. I mean, it should be where we shouldn't even have this conversation because our gazes should be so diverse in our storytelling that that's it. And right now we hardly have any diversity in Star Wars. So
I don't know. Someone told me that the reason that they hired Kelly Marie Tran was to get the Chinese, the audience from China.
Oh dear!
And
They cracked the code. Oh my God! Wow! Golly gee! My mind is blown.
Yeah, no, people be wild out there.
It is interesting because I was thinking about this and then Kiki said it. It's like you like examples of the female gaze in the Bad Batch, and I was kind of thinking, and I'm like, well, all of the male characters, we have Omega, of course, but all the Bad Batch themselves are very well developed. Men, they have. The show is not afraid to let these men be emotional, to be vulnerable. And I was like, and that could be considered to be kind of a road that the female gaze kind of goes down it a lot. And then Kiki said it, everyone is developed, everyone benefits, and allowing these soldiers, to be incredibly vulnerable with each other in the wake of such tragedy is maybe not, like what we think of when we think of the female gaze, but that's definitely an element there for sure. So she's completely right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I mean, I think that for me too, it's also hard because the story of the Bad Batch is a story of a little girl. And so for me as well, I'm also trying to think like when I think female gaze, I start thinking about things that are maybe connected to attraction and all that stuff. And of course, you don't see any of that with Omega, because she's looking at the world through the eyes of a young child. She's looking at them as older brothers, as family. So for me, I might just be very biased here in how I'm looking at it, because I look at that as a story of a young child, and I don't see any of maybe the quote unquote traditional themes that I would then maybe put within the female gaze. But
Okay.
yeah.
Well, let's do another quick lightning round, because obviously we want to stick on this topic of Star Wars, but I want to go around and do what are the best examples of it. Now, I know you're probably all thinking the same ones, so everyone only do one.
The best example of the female gaze in Star Wars?
No, in outside and media other than Star Wars. Just to give it an idea. And then we're gonna break it down all the Star Wars stuff. So if people were trying to think of something outside of Star Wars in order to liken it to, what would they choose? And I will go to Rhonda first, or no, Kiki first.
So the example that I always give people when they're like, "What's the female gaze?" I say, "Have you ever seen the movie Sleepless in Seattle?" And they're like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "It feels a little different when you watch it, right? Like it feels out." They're like, "Yeah, they fall in love because of the voice," and I'm like, "That's part of it. The voice is only a part of it." She falls in love because he's being emotionally open on national radio about the fact that he was so deeply in love with his wife and now he's lost her. That was what got her emotionally connected to this man. So Sleepless in Seattle is the example that I always give people.
Okay,
That's
I
good.
like that.
Very good choice.
Rhonda?
So I'm trying to think of because I keep going back to what you said, Kiki, about how the feminine gaze is so caught up in romance and attraction. So I'm trying to think of something that isn't about that, but that still uses feminine gaze. I think Russian Doll is very much about, which is a great series on Netflix by Leslie Headland, who is doing The Acolyte, which I'm very excited for. It's about one woman and her introspective journey, and how she sees herself, how she sees other people, and it's very much feminine gaze. And also there's a time loop, but that's a side note. I think also Fleabag. Yes.
Yes.
I would also say.
Well, you're only supposed to get one, because I don't want to take them from everyone else. I don't want.
Okay.
Because we know that it's a perspective that we need more of. So I fully anticipated that there wasn't going to be a ton of examples of it. What do you think? What do you think, Marilu?
Real quick before I continue, everybody here except for Brandon uses she, her pronouns, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Portrait of a Lady on Fire is usually the example that I give. It is directed by a woman, written by, it's a French film, and it is there's kind of a running joke about lesbian period dramas that I do think is legitimately pretty funny. But Portrait of a Lady on Fire is a very different animal. It encapsulates the female gaze so well, in my opinion, because it is literally about one woman painting a portrait of another woman. So the literal eyes, seeing someone, really seeing them, is played on a lot in that film. It is a beautifully intimate, it's about this woman. She paints portraits. She is hired to paint the portrait of a woman of higher standing than her, who is being married off to a man, I think in Italy, if I remember correctly. And the woman whose portrait she's painting does not want her portrait painted. She doesn't want to be painted. So there's a lot of like, you know,
Interesting.
the entire time our protagonist is trying to kind of catch a glimpse of her, but she's always wearing like lace around her face. Like there's a lot of push and pull between the two of them. And when that wall finally comes down and they really see each other, it is so intimate and beautiful and passive and soft. And there's a scene where it's actually like a portrait, like when she's painting her portrait, and it is one of the most impactful scenes I've seen in a movie in a very long time. I do legitimately think it might. I don't use the word like this movie's important or like this movie is like is a work of artistic genius. I don't use those terms lightly. I think that Portrait of a Lady on Fire falls into that, though. It is like it's the type of movie where it's like raining out and I watch it, then I cry all day. So yeah.
Okay. Awesome. I will have to watch that. I myself am like one of the stories I'm trying to write has a female protagonist, and there's so many times where I'm writing something and I'm like, is this what am I allowed to write this? Like I don't have the software I think to fully understand it, but hopefully this will help me get a little bit closer. How about you, Imris?
I was trying to think, and I think because so many of the examples that I would have said have already been used, but I love period films, and the reason why is because so much of it is told through nonverbal communication. So much of it is told through a mask where you basically have to read signals to understand a person and really dive deep. So like Pride and Prejudice, Emma, to me, Jane Austen is all about seeing the perspective of women living in a very patriarchal viewpoint and then ripping that viewpoint to the very truth of that person, all of those people involved. And you do see hand and eye contact in Pride and Prejudice and this new Emma as well. I really love it. Are those the strongest examples, especially Emma? No, but they were the examples that I could come up with at that point in time. I'll just stay there, but I would recommend. I've been reading a little bit of Bray's article about the female gaze. She is taking it to a level where female gaze is not just about seeing well-developed characters. It's also about seeing the world through that female character taking down the patriarchy through a feminine way. And she includes trans women in that discussion, that it's devoted to representing women's experience, including those of trans women's, in ways at the foreground that position on subjects' desire. So I'm just wondering if maybe, like you've been saying, that the femme gaze video has increased in conversation, maybe femme gaze has more diversity than once we thought. Do you think that definition helps, or do you think that definition is still pretty solidly masculine and feminine? I hope I'm not stepping on anyone's toes asking that question, but when I read that article, I wondered what other people would think about that. Because
like if our categorization is too gendered when talking about it.
Yeah, because I to me, when we started talking about, well, are the characters well developed, are they seen as full people, I think that is part of female gaze, but I think to me, femme gaze is not just about well-developed characters, because I think we can experience that through male gaze too. To me, femme gaze is more about experiencing the world through the eyes of the other, if that makes sense.
What I would. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Like I'm talking about a very sensitive subject here, and I'm asking these questions because I do want to know, can the femme gaze be explored in a more diverse way, or are we really stuck in the narrowness of it? Because if we can, I can bring up more examples of movies. That's why I'm asking this question, because I'm like, I have more examples, but would they fit in the criteria that's been presented? Am I making any sense? I apologize if I'm not.
I
No, I get it.
I understand. I don't have the answer.
I don't know the answer.
I got the
That's
question.
basically, yeah.
Um,
I think that's why, like, when we were initially talking about it, like, whenever I talk about the female gaze, I always point out how abstract it is. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, this is a big net. It's
Yeah.
a big net.
Mhm.
Like, I don't like to limit it. I know usually we view it through kind of the lens of sort of romance and sexuality, but I don't like to
Right.
limit it that way. I like to be like super abstract. You can come at this from any different angle. There's so, like, if like, let me put it this way. If the four of us were told to write, if like we had a professor, let's say we're all in college, we're working on our doctorates or whatever, and our professor says, all right, this is probably more undergrad, but like our professor is like, all right, write me an essay on the female gaze. I guarantee you that all four of us would turn in something completely different. Like,
Exactly.
I guarantee you. Like, so that's why I usually like to focus on, how abstract it is. And if it feels femme gaze to you, it can be considered it. That's usually my
Right.
approach. Yeah.
Well, and keep in
Right.
mind, like Mulvey, when she wrote this, like she wrote about the male gaze, right?
Mm-hmm.
She never gave us any definitions of what else was out there. She
Mm.
was specifically talking about this is the male gaze. She was defining it. She was talking about how, it is a medium of looking for pleasure and all of that. So that is literally the starting point that everybody kind of got. And then from there, there's not been a very clearly defined
Mm-hmm.
and
of
from
what.
Yeah.
from what I'm hearing, nor should there be.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I just thought of two of my favorite my favorite films. One of which is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and I feel like watching these two people where that intimacy was removed, but they still feel the connection versus someone that is viewing her through a very, I don't know, what would be pleasure driven way, but using the intimacy learned from this other person and how that interplays. I don't know. I don't know if that might be considered part of it. And then another one of my favorite movies is The Prestige, where you have the character, when you get to the end, you realize that he has a twin brother, and having the comparison with their wife
Yes.
the entire time, where there is all these subtle, but they're still pretending to be the same person. And she's like, no, you don't love me today.
Yeah.
But it makes it feel more special on the days that you do, and you find out why that is. I don't know. I'm curious if those two examples kind of fold in somehow.
I love the Prestige example. I love the Prestige as well, and you're completely right. I think that, like, yeah, like that's like the difference between, I mean, spoilers for the Prestige. Are we all okay with that?
It's been out for like 10 years. At this
Yeah,
point,
it's been out for a
you didn't
while.
see it.
Yeah, it's Christian Bale is actually a set of twins, but they never let anyone know that there's two of them to keep up this like charade of kind of like them being magicians and them working together, blah, 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 blah. So to keep up this charade, they're so dedicated to it that they marry the same woman. And one is in love with her and the other is not. And that's where she says, yeah, like, you don't love me today. You don't mean it today. Because she doesn't know that she's technically married to two men. But yeah, I feel like, you know, I always say that, like, the male gaze is seeing it. The male gaze is looking at someone and the female gaze is seeing someone. Like,
Yes.
it's this, like, so you have one version of the twin that looks at her and the other one that loves her sees her. Like, it's and it's a very abstract kind of subjective way to put it. I said that to someone once and they were like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, and I really don't blame them because it is so kind of abstract, but like, I think that's a good example, Brandon. I like that idea of looking versus seeing.
Yes. Yes.
Well, and I would also say, like, within the female gaze, I think that it removes women from this passive position within the story and it puts them in an active position. And what that means is that the female character is no longer having to accept crumbs from the male character. To be attracted to someone, to be in a relationship with them, you do have to bring something to the fucking table.
Yeah.
And if you are an active person in the story, if you are an active character in the story, suddenly the person that is attracted to you, they have to bring something to the table. And what that forces is, for usually in this situation, male characters to be well developed, for them to have a personality, for them to have goals, for them to put in effort to get the attention of the female character. And so when I go back and I say the female gaze literally helps everybody, that's what I'm talking about. This forces the male characters to connect and have traits that I think are traditionally attractive to many women.
Yeah. Yeah. Or anyone. Yeah. Anyone. Yeah, I've been reading a lot of from Bray. That's who I quoted about how she includes trans women in this discussion of the female gaze. And one thing that she says, like, she has 6 qualifications. I pulled up the quote because I love it because it helps me define the scope a little bit more. But she says the female gaze is a story that calls into the question of the patriarchal order, meaning, is she calling out the system that oppresses her and is, by doing that, makes her more of an individual. And that's one of the reasons I think that it's more diverse than we think femme gaze is. Or according to Bray, she sees more possibility of diversity in this discussion. I don't know. My brain has been full of Bray lately because of this
Well,
book.
I think, you know, I'm pretty quiet on this because, frankly, I'm not a trans woman. And I'm not going to try to speak for them. I'm not going to try to speak for my experience. So that's why I'm sitting here quietly, because I don't think that I should even try to broach that subject because I would overstep very quickly. So that's why personally I just don't feel like I can offer any commentary on this.
I didn't necessarily mean let's discuss it from a trans woman point of view. I meant it more of diversity as a whole. Like, what? I don't know. I'm asking the question because you said something that just really perked my ears, and I guess I wanted to know more. Is you said that this is very much of a I'm trying to think of the words. Forgive me. But male and female gaze is more of like
we're talking about like the limitations that those terms present.
Limitations.
There's only 2 identity. Well, is that right?
Too many identities. So that, I wasn't necessarily talking. She mentions trans women, and that's the reason I was mentioning trans women in this. But she's talking more about the fact that it's not just about yeah, I'm sorry. These thoughts are like more of like not baked in my mind. That's why I'm not very articulate about it, and I apologize. But to me, I just feel like there's something more in this than just developed characters. There's something more in the female gaze than tearing down structures that mean to suppress. And that's one thing that I see in, okay, here it is. This is what I was going for. And I didn't realize that I had to spew out nonsense to get to my point. But if you look at Pride and Prejudice, if you look at The Last Jedi, if you look at Woman on Fire, if you look at all of those women have a key component of, they're not just falling in love, they're just not being intimate or knowing someone or seeing this whole character. They're also tearing down a structure that prohibits them from feeling and doing and being who they truly are. And in The Last Jedi, you see that with Rey and deconstructing the Jedi Order, with Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility. You see it with some of the more stern patriarch that tells what a woman should do and what a woman should not do. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, it's not just about knowing a person or having well-developed characters. I think also in the femme gaze, it's about a revolution as well. And so hence that is the diversity. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, I'm definitely I'm following, and it feels so even though we are
Yes.
often having this
Comes down to agency, simply put. Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry. Forgive my Miranda. It was just not a very well baked thought. Forgive me.
I know.
So essentially being an active character.
I know an active character, yes, but I think also part of the female gaze is about tearing down restrictions as well. Because the male gaze, again, is not just objective. It's that the story and everyone around it is around you. Where I think the male gaze is more about tearing it down and making it more about not just one person, but a group of people or a pair of people.
I often find that like there is liberation in self-discovery. Like when when with a lot of these stories that we're bringing up, a lot of these female characters, there is that feeling of like the completion of their heroine's journey, whether that heroine's journey be one of self-discovery or any other kind of journey they may go on. Rey is on my mind since we're talking about Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's all about her finding out who she is. And
Mhm.
with that knowledge comes power. It comes there, like you cannot. It's kind of like the same thing with. I know Captain Marvel's kind of it's kind of a polarizing film. I liked it. I don't certainly understand the criticisms, but I like it. And it's like when Carol finds out who she is, I forget Jude Law's character's name. Jude Law cannot control her anymore. Like with knowledge of self-discovery, of self-actualization comes that power and that agency to make kind of like a more active difference. So I see what you mean for sure.
I mean, it's a difference for people at large, not just one person, but many people. Like when you got your stories about breaking down the patriarch, which according to Bray, that's part of female gaze. You are breaking down a structure that confines not just you, but confines everybody. So I just think that there is something about that, a theme that I'm now seeing from reading this book, that it's more than just a love story. It's also seen through the female gaze, seeing people, seeing who they are, and then seeing what they truly need and helping them achieve that.
Yeah. So let's now take it and apply it directly into Star Wars. And obviously there's not a ton of examples of this in the original or the prequel trilogy. But if there is, I mean, can you guys think of any examples of it in either of those trilogies, or where it should be but it's missing?
Hmm.
I guess we'll start there. Um,
Rhonda, why don't you start?
Somebody in the chat way back, I think it was Brooke, mentioned the episode of The Mandalorian, which is in the original trilogy era, which I don't remember which episode it was.
The episode, I think it's episode 4 with Omira, correct?
Yes, that one. And I think,
Yeah,
Kiki, didn't
Camille
you
was
do a
bringing that
video
up.
about this recently? About how, like, you can, like, you don't even see his face, and yet he's personified through Omira's, like, we don't really see through her gaze, but yeah, so, like, the feminine gaze is personifying the object of desire rather than objectifying. And I think that particular episode really, maybe because it is kind of a romantic connection and attraction, I think that particular episode we really see that personification. And I don't, that's the main example I can think of in the original trilogy era.
Yeah. And how about you, Ege? Any thoughts?
There is one scene that comes to mind for me, and again, it's kind of this feeling of, it just feels like the female gaze to me. And to be fair, there is an emphasis on the actual gaze, on the actual action of gazing, and it's the scene in Revenge of the Sith where Anakin and Padme are in separate buildings and they're staring across the city at each other. And it's when Anakin makes the decision to do what he has to do. It's just, even though the result of that particular moment is very, is violent, and it's very it's very masculine, it's like this very, like, he's like, I'm gonna go do this thing, and there is such the quiet passive intimacy of that scene, and how there is no dialogue, there is no physical touching. It is just two people looking across the city at each other. They maybe don't even know that the other is doing the same action they're doing. And that silent, tragic sort of resolution, it just feels very feminine to me. So that one, I think that would be my example from the prequel trilogy.
Okay.
And it is like, that is kind of like, even though they're not literally seeing each other, it's that eye contact. At least that's like the if I'm remembering correctly, like the way that it's filmed, the eye line matches up, so it kind of seems like they're looking. Am I remembering it correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I feel it in Return of the Jedi when Luke and Leia are talking. Never mind. I'm kidding.
That's actually, I was actually about to say that one.
Okay. Go for it, Kiki.
No, I mean, so I wouldn't ever classify it as a romantic scene, but I think it's a scene where it's really centering down on Leia talking about, at the time, like, her memories, and then talking about her feelings. And it's a scene that is centered both on Luke and Leia connecting with each other, but also on Leia expressing her emotions in a way that she frankly doesn't get to do in such a, it's such a peaceful setting, because she expresses her emotions a lot with Hans, but it's usually yelling at him because he has pushed the last damn button with her. As I get older, I understood Princess Leia so much more. I was like, oh, like there's this, sorry, I'm on a tangent now. There's this great line in, like, Empire Strikes Back, where she's like sitting down, she's like, one of these days you're going to be wrong, and I hope that I'm there to see it. And I was like, I understood that level of rage.
Hmm.
Definitely felt that toward somebody in my life before. But in Return of the Jedi, it's a much more peaceful scene. It's very quiet. And Luke, the way that he's looking at her, of course, it's his sister, but he's just sitting there like looking at her with so much love and affection. And it's a brother-sister love, and it's just very sweet. And I think that's something to also mention. What I would say about the female gaze is it's not necessarily romantic. It can be, but it's not always.
Okay. Yeah, just like
Definitely.
yeah. How about you? Emrys, you have one?
Yeah, I was thinking, to me, again, it's not romance or anything, but it's a female seeing and hearing and knowing a person. Is the scene in in Mandalorian when Ahsoka talks to Grogu about who he truly is, what his history is, and she sees through the Force. And maybe that is a part of a femme gaze. It's not just looking at the eyes of the person, but who they are, what their story is, what they have felt, what they have seen. I mean, that was like a parent and child finger touching scene when she takes his hand. Is they now know each other, and Ahsoka is now the living person that knows and has felt through the Force Grogu's story.
Oh, you and I also have JJ Cat Lady in the chat who was talking about oh no, Brooke brought it up first. Sorry. The kiss and Attack of the Clones before they go out into the Coliseum feels very feminine, and I love that scene and the framing of it. And if I'm understanding this correctly, I think we might be able to characterize in this film what Anakin was doing to her before was very male gaze, especially the way the fireplace scene ends is
Yes.
is quite uncomfortable. He looks,
Yes.
and you're like, yeah, no, but take a lap, a cold shower, baseball, whatever. I don't care. But it feels like after that scene, they go to Tatooine, and that's where she gets to see him open up and be emotional, and then they connect, and then it feels like that kiss was both of them coming together rather than him devouring her. If that makes.
It's a perfect flip-flop of what The Last Jedi is. Like the fire scene took Rey and Ben together, and then it pushed them into the Coliseum of Snoke's throne room so they could fight together.
I was just thinking, like, the Phantom Menace, the end. Well, it's near the end, but it's a scene where Padme reveals that she's been the queen all along. And I don't know if it would technically even be considered the female gaze, but it's a scene that has always struck me as being this moment where you realize that this young woman always had agency. She was just standing down and waiting, because that was at that point, was to not be noticeable for the whole movie. She didn't want attention, and that was the whole point. And so I know that there's like, that was a moment that, like, I just remember being a very young girl and just being blown away by the idea of, like, no, this woman who's very pretty and that you like throughout this movie, she was being strategic this whole time. There was a strategy to everything that she did. But I don't know if that's female gaze or if it's just I liked that moment. So
yeah.
No, I see what you mean. Like kind of that, like
more deep thought into it, honestly.
Well, let's jump into the sequel trilogy, and we can kind of spend the last the rest of our time in here, because there's a lot of examples. I know there's some hand gestures and lightsaber grabbing to discuss. But yeah, what jumps out at you guys? If I can I'll go to Emrys first.
Oh, femme gaze in The Last Jedi. I I think pretty much the whole movie is femme gaze. I think one that I just talked to someone about is the shirtless scene with Kylo Ren. Like, if you look at that, at first you think that might be an aversion of the male gaze because she's looking at a man's half nakedness. But I think in the femme gaze perspective, and truly I think it's the femme gaze because she didn't want to objectify him. What that scene truly is Rey seeing him as a man, not a monster, not a machine like Vader, but someone who is scarred and broken, someone who is wanting the truth of that night to be known by someone of, look, this is what happened to me with Luke. He wants to be intimate with her, and she finally decides that she's going to go and discover the truth for herself about herself too. So that scene is not just a man appearing and being naked so we can oogle him. That scene means so much more in the femme gaze of Rey seeing who Kylo is. He's not just a murderous snake. He's a man who has been through so much and was betrayed by his uncle that he truly trusted.
Yeah. I've been meaning to add that to the TikTok audio with Rey being like, "Hey, this looked pretty good. Where you close at?"
I'm sure she thought that too, but I think at the same time, through the femme gaze, it was more about her looking at him and seeing him, because she could be staring at that chest, like the amazing thickness of it all. But instead,
Refrigerator man.
she was looking into his eyes. She was hearing what he had to say. She was seeing his story for the first time. And that's probably the only person that Ben has said to her, this is what happened to me that night. This is why I burned the temple down. See me, know me as I see you, as I know your heart. That you've been looking for a father figure everywhere, in Han Solo. But look, like, swallow the truth about who you are and know who I am too.
I'm sure no one's ever asked him what happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's probably the first time. Brooke says every time Rey fixes BB-8's antenna, it's very famous to me. I mostly just think of Marilu now with that.
Oh, thanks.
Awesome, amazing, Rey cosplay this
thank
past
you.
weekend, and yeah, those videos were awesome.
It just warms my heart.
But yeah, go ahead.
When we talk, and I think it's also important, very, very, very quickly, to talk about, because when we're looking at the sequel trilogy, a lot of the examples that I've pointed out, examples that Rhonda has, and examples that I'm sure Kiki has as well, and it's this feeling of we need to acknowledge the phallic nature of lightsabers very, very quickly. Okay, so here's the thing about lightsabers, because okay,
I'm sorry. I felt like I was just back in college, and my women's studies professor's like, let's start talking about swipe sabers and what they really mean.
Yes,
and
we're back in college, guys. But because here's the thing. So I posted this video about the scene. In fact, and I'll use that scene as an example. The scene where Ben flicks his fingers and Rey's hand comes up and grabs the saber. And I was like, this is very sexual. And this is very feminine gaze to me, because it's not explicit sexuality, but it is sexual through imagery and through implication. And a lot of people responded with, well, what are you talking about? All she's doing is grabbing a lightsaber. Like, what, you're saying that every time someone grabs a lightsaber, it's phallic? No, certainly not. But what we have to acknowledge about lightsabers is that lightsabers are so phallic in nature that it's almost funny. It is funny. It's hilarious. They might be the most phallic weapon in fiction, because like when we're looking at phalluses, you know, we're looking at swords, axes. Like, it's getting
You
spicy. I told
imagine
you.
tuning into a podcast at this moment.
This moment.
This is what
I'd be very
Well, so
happy.
not to throw you off, but
I like
like
it, though.
this makes me think of like someone like General Grievous, who's like the lightsaber is
Oh,
what
yeah.
makes me tough, and
Oh,
that's
yeah.
why he goes overboard with it. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh,
He's compensating.
because
he's
he's
a
a
bug
robot
man.
dude, you
Yeah.
know. Uh,
But
Sorry, go
it's
ahead.
like, no, you're fine. It's hilarious. It's goofy and crazy and wacky. Of course it's funny. But when we're looking at phalluses in fiction, like phallic weaponry, we look at swords, we look at axes, we look at those types of things. You know, they're unsheathed, they're blah, blah, blah. Okay, got it. But the thing about a lightsaber is that a lightsaber in of itself, the hilt itself is realistic, is probably more than an axe, more than a sword, realistically phallic. And also, like, you guys, you turn them on and they grow. Okay, like, it's a thing. I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry, like, but it's hilarious. Okay, and now, do I think that, does that mean that every time someone uses a lightsaber it's sexual? No, of course not. But sometimes it is meant to be. And you know, when we're looking at that scene in The Last Jedi, that shot, that continuous 5-second long shot of Kylo moving his fingers and Rey coming up and grabbing the saber, again, it's passive sexuality. It's not explicit, but at the same time, it kind of is. This is, you know, performing a certain act for your partner. I don't know what else to say. Like, I'm just saying that when he flicks his fingers, every woman, every femme presenting person in the audience went, oh, okay. And every man went like, huh?
What
Like,
happened?
what? You know, and I don't blame them. I'm not saying men are, you know, you didn't notice it, silly man. Like, no, of course not. Why would you? But I think in that context, with that motion moving forward and leading into Rey coming up and grabbing the saber, a saber, by the way, that Ben perceives to be his.
Yes.
Okay, it is sexual in nature, and I think that's a really good example of like the female gaze being utilized by Ryan in The Last Jedi, you know, in a sexual way. So I said phallus, I think 50 times. Anyways, moving on.
Is there a
There is
rating
a
on
women's
this?
studies professor who's very proud of you.
What, Kiki?
I said somewhere there's a women's studies professor that is very proud of you.
Thank you.
No, but like when you were talking about that, that was the first thing that I thought was when he does that motion, and he's calling the lightsaber though, right?
Mm,
He's putting complete trust in Rey that she's going to catch it.
yeah.
He's doing something. He's like, look, I know that I can use the Force in such a powerful way that I can pull this towards us. I know she's going to catch it. And so, like, it's also putting a lot of trust in Rey to handle the situation once he's already done something.
He
And
didn't
so
pull
I
it towards
watched that
himself.
entire scene. I'm like, that is Kylo just not trying to do ever like this, oh, save the damsel in distress. It's like, no, I need to do this one thing, and then I know she can handle it from here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really think about that. In the previous movie, it's that belongs to me, and he tries to pull it towards himself. This time, he didn't try to pull it towards himself at all.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at JJ's comment.
What's also
And
that
then it
this-
grew after she grabbed it. I'm done.
Oh gosh.
And then
I told you it was gonna
and
get
then
spicy.
the following fight scene got so hot and heavy that it burned the set down.
Yeah, there we go.
There
How
you go.
much more do you want? The one scene that I think of in The Last Jedi, and it might be a little surprising to say, but it's, I think, the first scene where they connect through the Force. And, you know, she's like mad. She's like, you know, like, wait, what's going on? How do you do it? And Kylo like is looking around and she's like spitting, but she's like, you monster, you do this. He's looking around and he's like, can you see me? Because I can see you. And it's just like this. But what it does is that it shows you another side of Kylo Ren, which is that he's kind of like this awkward, silly person. Like when you take him out of the context of being this Dark Lord fighter person, Sith, whatever, he's just kind of a silly person.
Mm.
And it also gives you another understanding. Like, you know, when we bent the English is not happening tonight. Like I said, what makes a character important? You know, having a personality. And it develops that personality. And you see a part of Kylo Ren, of Ben Solo, and you're like, oh, this person's funny. If we'd met him any other time in his life, he would probably be that dopey, like nerd kid that had 15 girls kind of deal. You know what I'm saying? So that was a thing that really appealed to me, but also humor appeals to me. If you can make me laugh, you've already gotten in with me at that point.
Well, it's showing how much he has the heart of Han Solo too. Like he slid like Han. He had more of those like really awkward moments that Han does with Leia. To me, that's the beautiful part of Leia and Han is you only see who truly Han is when he's with Leia. Through Leia's eyes, you see that vulnerable man that he is that does want to be a hero. But when he's around with the other guys, he goes into the shell of machoism. You know,
I was about to say he's another person with Chewie as well. He gets but then again, like Chewie, what was it like the phrase is like there's a story of a man and the dog, and Han
exactly.
is the
Yep.
Exactly.
Han is Chewie's gerbil.
Yes.
Yeah.
You'll get
It's
another
true,
one when he
it's true.
does.
What you say that like he does show a different side of himself with Leia.
Yeah.
We have a forwarded to the black says, "What theater kids can flirt?" And my active theory is that all villains in Star Wars were just former theater kids, except for Anakin, who should have been a theater kid, but like he was raised in a tradition that wouldn't allow it. His parents are like, no, and he's like, I just have to be theatrical, you know, like that's. Let me be, and that's why he became a Sith Lord.
Yeah.
Well, I think that I've talked about villains before on my channel, but I think that a lot of times, and I've had so many people be like, but why do women love villains? Like, why do you like Bane? I've had that question a couple of times lately because they're like, this is getting a little bit out of pocket. But,
I love it.
I'm like, I'll sacrifice myself to like save Gotham. You guys just send me and I'll figure it out. Send me in with like a bottle of wine and some like romantic music CDs. I will figure this situation out in about 24 hours. But I think that realistically speaking, villains, if you think about like what appeals to the female gaze, to be a good villain, you have to have motivation. Villains are often driven by something emotional. Something bad has happened to them and they want revenge. They want to make things right, or they want something that they feel is owed to them. They are usually emotionally driven. So when you think about how villains are written, about how they are portrayed, they fall directly into that displaying emotion, connecting with people. A good villain has to connect with people. And I think that's why characters like Kylo Ren and Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, that's why they do appeal so much to the female gaze. It's because you've already got the setup right there for it.
It's funny. I mean, you guys are explaining all this stuff, and I think about like my courtship with my wife, and I wasn't like, I'm obviously not a villain, but like I just see stuff that lines up of like, you know, when the villain is obviously I could be very wrong on all of this stuff, so please check me. That's totally cool and welcome. But I think one of the cool things about the villain is that the villain's purpose is not to get the girl. The villain's purpose, he has his own, they have their own purpose. They're doing stuff, they're making moves, they have their own drive and focus, and it's almost like how do I explain it? It's almost like it's like you're pulling something out of them by catching their attention,
Mhm.
not waving something in front of them to catch their attention. You know?
Mm,
Well, a villain has to convince you to be with them. I mean,
yes.
like here we go. We're all getting on like the Kiki like Bane train at this point. So like think about it. Think about it. If Bane was ever to try to convince me to go and be his wife and live with him, think of all the things that you're gonna have to be able to convince me of. Like dealing with the bullshit every fucking day in Gotham, having to be on the run. And I think that like when you think about villains, they have to be charismatic. They have to also though be, and like you said, like the focus is not the woman, right? But if they want somebody, they have to know what that person wants. They have
Mm,
to be able to specifically tell them, I know that you want money. I know that you want this thing, and I can give that to you. And that's why you should come and be with me.
mhm.
Heroes got like, I'm the son of like some freaking Valhalla god. Like
Yeah.
that's what they got. A villain actually has to know what you want and actually be able to adjust to get you to come and be with them.
Which
Mm,
is exactly why the women were wiling out way more over Loki than over Thor.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. It's like there's something about villains like and it's like and when I say this I mean it kind of more in the abstract like kind of everything we've been talking about but like a villain knows themselves. There's
Mm.
something about a character like you guys are completely right. There's something about a character that knows themselves about like and it's like and let's look at it strictly through like that heterosexual kind of lens, men and women, okay, but it really is that like there's something about a man that knows himself, that knows what he wants, that is emotionally intelligent enough to understand, you know, what happened to me was wrong, and I'm going to do whatever I need to do to emotionally, that's part of it, emotionally rectify this to make it right for me. And it's like, and of course that's selfish, and of course that's narcissistic or whatever. They're the bad guy, like absolutely. But there is something about like some guy strolling through a door being like, I know who I am, I know what I want, like that is so appealing. Like Kiki, I completely understand the Bane appeal. I so get it. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, yes, someone's talking about Bane. Give Bane some love. Absolutely.
Because it's also nice. It's also nice because it's like, oh, thank goodness, I don't have to do that emotional like work for you or try to do that emotional work for
Yeah.
you.
Let's
And you
unpack
can
this
communicate.
together.
Bane tells
Yeah.
people when he's gonna kill them. Now? I don't need to be told that I'm gonna die, but like, if you have that communication skill down, you can also communicate that you need somebody to do something for you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like life gets easier.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to re-listen to this again and like take some notes.
No, I'm trying to figure out back to Star Wars.
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
I
was
do feel like
wanting,
I've emotionally matured by not making a back-breaking joke for Bane. Anyways,
to get back to lightsabers, I had an I had another example that I've used before of feminine gaze in specifically in The Last Jedi. And it's a parallel with scenes from Attack of the Clones and The Empire Strikes Back. I actually did a video about this. So the mirror cave scene in The Last Jedi, I won't shut up about it. I'm sorry. So Rey goes into the mirror cave because she wants an answer about who she is and where she belongs. And she looks into a mirror, she gazes into a mirror, and she sees herself, and that she sees who she is. And it parallels with the masculine gaze scenes in Attack of the Clones and in Empire Strikes Back. So in Anakin and Luke's scenes, they both have lightsabers in their hands, and they're both facing their deepest, darkest fear by trying to fight it with a lightsaber. Rey is facing her deepest, darkest fear empty-handed and seeing it through a feminine perspective, feminine. And it's like, it's an introspection and a reflect, like literally a reflection, but like a reflective process rather than like an outward combative expression.
Yeah, and Yoda
Yeah.
even tells Luke, "Your lightsaber, you will not need it," and he's like, "Screw you, man!
He takes it
I'm
anyway.
doing
Yeah.
violence."
That's the male gaze.
Yeah.
Put
I
that
was gonna ask you to talk about that scene, Rhonda. I'm so glad. I mean, like, talk about the cave, Rhonda.
JJ also mentions the cave.
Yes, all the caves on Octo look like lady parts. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's not a coincidence.
Well, you know what? What's okay? Is there a significance that you guys find with the Thalian siren? I can't remember the name of the species, but the thing that Luke drinks the milk from. Because Ryan Johnson was very, very adamant that had to be in the film, and they spent a lot of time and effort and money creating this big giant thing and airlifting it, like helicopter dropping it on here just for one scene of him drinking the milk. Does that have additional significance to you guys?
I was.
No. All right, that's cool. If it doesn't, I was just thinking like, okay, he's drinking milk and like I don't know if it's
To me, that I mean, I've heard I didn't view it this way, but I have heard some people saying that Luke did it deliberately to make Rey insecure, showing a feminine, using feminine anonymity for his own survival. Like, and she looks away as he milks that cow. I mean, basically it's a sea cow. That's what it is. And she's embarrassed, so she looks away. So he's using it in a way to make her uncomfortable. To me, I see it more of Luke just showing how he survives on the island, going forth fishing. I see that more of a utilization of the resources on the island, that he's fishing and he's milking just like a farmer would do. And yes, he depends upon a female animal to help him do that.
Well, and
Okay.
everything about Octo is also very feminine.
Yes.
Like all of the caretakers are female. Everything is like green and soft and maybe not soft, maybe that's not the right word, but like it's very like
Unlike
there's
sand.
light
Lush.
and yes, lush. Yeah, that's a better word. But it's
Yeah.
like the source of life, like it's, like the source of the Jedi, right? And it's, there's all these plants and the natural world. And yeah, I think that like it's very intentionally where Rey is as she's kind of awakening to her femininity.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, she goes from this hard, masculine, dry, place to this feminine landscape to discover her femininity, discover her feminine self,
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's the tree, the library that does look like a vagina. I mean, that was what we called it. We called it the Yeti tree was the vagina tree, and she finds the library. It's her self-discovery. She is learning, because that's the Last Jedi. That's the Last Jedi. Last Jedi is Rey's sexual awakening. She's finding herself, but she's also awakening to a love story, to herself as a female. And so you have that imagery there as well. I recently saw Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith as well. Attack of the Clones, there is so many vaginas in Attack of the Clones, where in Revenge of the Sith there's a lot of phallic symbolism in Revenge of the Sith. Like, we're talking about the kiss when Padme and Anakin kiss going into the Colosseum. The Colosseum has a hole that looks like a vagina. But then if you look at, just watch it with that in mind, and Freud will give you a whole new meaning to that
I'll-
story.
And then when
I'll put on my
Padme
vagina goggles. and
When-
we
Yes.
look.
when Padme jumps down from the column and lands on the back of and it's like Shayla Wren has a whole video where she calculates like how much force is being put on Padme's
Yes.
when she lands.
Yes.
Oh yeah. It's and and just the concept of their force connections, Kylo and Rey's force connections in general, is inherently feminine, because Ryan talked a lot about how he needed these characters to talk to each other without being able to attack each other, because it was like they're going to see each other, they're going to attack each other. So he came up with this concept of like these like sort of like these force bonds where like you want to talk about, not being able to touch one another. You want to talk about like having to see each other, having to speak to each other, like no violence can happen. It literally cannot. They try, Rey tries. Rey tries shooting him, and he's like, "Oh, what do you think the physics of this are?" And she's like, "Die." He's like, I have questions. But like violence literally cannot happen. And that is very feminine. And there's just my God, like someone else has to talk about the water on the glove, the moisture on the glove.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
All of the water. All of the water.
I'm sorry.
Wait,
All of
what?
the Catholic story be like, yeah, and I just looked up at Darth Chaco, and he's just going, I missed it. He's like, this look of a man who's like, I have missed something big. Oh God.
I'm like, with the first time when Rey connects with the Force and the like huge geyser of water spurts out of the lady hole,
Yep.
Yeah, makes sense.
And wait, Brandon, have you never heard the moisture on the glove thing?
He stands there and he does this. He's like,
Kiki, do you want to take it away?
he's the way this man, he's checking out to see if there's moisture on the gloves, and he's just doing this, and then you're sitting there. I'm like,
interesting
choice, Ryan. Interesting choices we're making with our filming today.
Okay, but like at the same time, I mean, it's been long established that the Force is the energy field of life, and what more is there than like I don't know. There's that awakening is what brings forth new life, and that's part of what he explains when he's explaining the Force to her, like death and destruction, and then like sadness and happiness, and death that leads to more life. And then of course in the following film she gains that healing ability, to the ability to impart life. I don't know, I just like things are just like moving in my head, and I'm just like,
well, something else.
God, I'm dumb.
No, you're not.
No. This is about
what's important about these conversations between Kylo and between Rey is one thing that I'd point out is that this is happening in a setting where there are not a lot of social constructs on this conversation. Think about, for example, Padme and Anakin. She had to constantly think about her status as a senator. She had to think about multiple social implications for being in a relationship. Rey has none of that on this little island in the middle of nowhere. Nobody, like, really the only stressors on this at this point are Luke being like, stop doing that. And, but there are no social constraints on Rey. The second thing is that she controls the conversations.
Mm-hmm.
It is Rey asking questions. It is Rey making demands of Kylo and saying, no, I have questions. You will be answering them to me. He gives explanations, but Rey is the one who controls most of the dialogue when they talk. And I think that's also something very interesting about their conversations. Like, well, why does this appeal to the female gaze? Rey's in complete control of these interactions. And I think from my memory, she's also in control when they end to an extent.
Okay, that brings so in The Force Awakens, right? We have their first meeting, and she just tries to shoot him, right? And he's in full control, and he stops her, and he knocks her unconscious, and he doesn't go Bill Cosby,
Takes her to
but
the
like,
underworld, yes.
But anyways, he picks her up
Takes her to the underworld.
Yes.
But he, it's not like if it was like Han that he did that, he wouldn't pick up Han. He would grab him by the ankle and drag him.
Mhm.
Yes.
Or have his stormtroopers carry him.
Yeah,
Like, that's an option.
Bridal carry.
but
right.
The bridal carry.
exactly.
Yeah.
So he bridal carries her, and then once they get in, so like in that first interaction, she has zero agency. She tries, but fails, and he has all the agency. And then he takes her, and then like she's locked up. But he's like, "You will give me the information," and that's when she first starts to gain her own agency.
Mm.
Am I onto a thing here?
The
There
Force.
was definitely something about that. I mean,
It's
Well-
go ahead, Em.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is the Force Awakens. It's the Force Awakening in them both. And that's when they basically wake up the dyad, so to speak. Kasdan, who helped Abrams write the script, said there is something that is a very important thing happening between Rey and Kylo at this, when they recognize a force that is similar to each other. Like they're both awakened to that there's the same energy in each other. And he talks about it. So I'm sorry, Reylo was planned. Reylo was planned right at that beginning.
Well,
And
yeah.
you see her, she's in the locks, but she's the one that gains the upper hand. He tries to steal information from her. She goes right into his mind and steals his training. Steals is not the right word, but it is about an energy between them, about Force awakening between them, and that is her. The sexual awakening did not start in The Last Jedi. The sexual awakening started as soon as she heard the call to the saber, which is the call to the man.
Mhm.
And then
Oh,
eating
damn.
the fruit. Well, we were talking about the lightsaber being a phallic symbol, but it's also a symbol of paternity, and that is something that has happened since medieval lit. It's about the male line. It's about whoever holds the swords gets the sovereignty, gets to rule the nations, gets to bear the not the bastards, but the proper children, things of that nature. So she was taking basically the legacy of the males in the family by taking that sword. And she was, even unarmed, even without that she had full power over him. So when anyone tells me that the interrogation scene is so bad and Kylo treats her so badly, I'm like, what scene did you watch?
Yeah.
That
It's
was empowering.
it's also one thing I really like is that despite kind of like the jokes we make about Kylo being like, this emotional wreck, which he is, of course, but like, like how we were talking about earlier with villains and how there's like kind of emotional intelligence to them. One of the things that I love about those Force connections between the two of them in The Last Jedi is that you guys are correct for sure. Like she's controlling the conversation, but Kylo does challenge her back. He forces her to confront her emotions and to confront sort of the feelings that she's getting from the questions she's asking. Like when she's like, why did you hate your father? And he goes, I didn't. And she goes, then why did you? And he goes, do what? Say it. Like he makes her confront that emotion. He challenges her. So she's controlling the conversation, but he's challenging her right back. So there is that mutual kind of push and pull between the two of them, because like the feminine gaze isn't so much so about, it's not really about, at least in my opinion, isn't about one party, whether it be female, male, or what have you. It's not about one party dominating the other. It's about that mutual kind of push and pull and play and respect and control between two people kind of rising together to meet a challenge. And I really love that he's like, okay, ask your questions, but I'm gonna make you face your own shit too. Like it's
Mhm.
really, really good. Yeah.
Yeah. The force
Wow.
the force Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No,
Your turn.
go
I
ahead.
interrupted you. Um
Well, I just wanted to say, I do apologize because we are running long, but I'm super fascinated, and like I'm just like putting all these pieces together of like, did I miss all of this stuff?
Did I miss all of Star Wars?
who am I?
yeah.
But so I will say we will need to head towards it and exit fairly soon.
Mm. Yeah, we're
But
rolling up on 2 hours. Yeah.
but go ahead and continue with what you're gonna say, and then after that, I'll make sure to get everyone's final thoughts and where we can find them and all that good stuff. Anyways,
Oh, I was okay. I don't even remember where I was going. I apologize.
okay. um, but just real quick though, like all this stuff started connecting of like her growing up and still considering, because she lost her parents, didn't have that guidance with growing up and the transition into becoming an adult and becoming a woman, and so she never got that portion of the guidance, and so she all of a sudden gets a father figure, but at the same time has the call to the lightsaber, um and then meets this boy, and there's like all this interplay between trying to be a kid with your parents and live as in a family versus having to grow up and accept that portion. But I've never gone through puberty as a woman, so there's a lot of stuff I don't understand that I feel like I'm somewhat close to, but I don't know. I'll have to ask some questions
But there's
later.
femininity in you too, Brandon. Like there's
Yes.
femininity and masculinity in everyone, So you having an experience that you connect through to sort of like the feminine part of yourself, like makes total sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
The part of the reason femme gaze is so mysterious is there's not enough of it. Like most of media is made for the male gaze through the male gaze, and so like I think everyone understands it. They're just not used to it, so it's almost like a foreign language. I used to be an English teacher too, and Shakespeare was one of my favorite classes to teach. I taught about 6 of his plays, and what I would tell the kids is, when you read this, and the more you read it, the more natural it will be to read. You're just not used to the way the Renaissance spoke things with rhythm and the these and the thous and the King James English, but it's a rhythm. That's the same thing with femme gaze. The more you read, the more you watch, the more you listen, the more femme gaze will be a second way of looking at the world around you. You just need to awaken to it.
I would actually take it a step farther and say that it's downright demonized in our
Yeah.
society of any sort of
Yeah.
connection. And there's certain things like I don't know, for instance, physical touch, which is always viewed through like a sexual lens, but it's not
Yeah.
at all like a dog enjoys being pet. People need to have contact, but it's always forcibly viewed through a certain lens and then demonized. So you're kind of like putting it off. And sorry, I'm just having a whole bunch of stuff rush through my head at this moment, and so I'm not collecting it super well. But I don't know. I think there's yeah, I'm gonna need some reading. I'm gonna have some reading to do in my near future. Go ahead, Kiki.
I always tell people, if you truly want to educate yourself on the feminine gaze, there's a couple of things that I always recommend. The first of which is pick up a romance novel that was written by a woman. Start reading romance novels written by women.
Mhm.
I'm a big historical lover. I love historical romance novels. But these are men that are literally written by women. They are written for the entire purpose of a female audience to connect with and like. And looking at that, and then take and compare those male heroes in these novels to something like, I don't know, Die Hard. And how are these men different? And ask yourself that question. What is different about these men compared to like Die Hard? Another thing that I recommend is watch, not what somebody once said. I was reading a bunch of stuff before this. Not everything made by women is going to be in the feminine gaze. Not every story about a woman was within the female gaze.
Yes.
But one show that I really love to tell people to watch if you're looking for the female gaze is called The Midwife.
Yes.
Woman, it is directed by a woman. The entire story is around the experiences of women in labor, childbirth, and motherhood. And look at how the men in Call the Midwife are written. And you will see how they are completely different than how men in other mediums are written. And what do the men do in Call the Midwife? What do they talk about the women with? Extremely important things.
Okay.
I would also recommend for like a really good basic foundation on sort of one view of the female gaze, Jill Soloway did a talk at the Toronto International Film Festival in 2016, and you can watch that on YouTube. I think it's like less than an hour long, and she gives like kind of the background of like the male gaze, and then just kind of discusses how she views the female gaze. She's a filmmaker, and so she discusses how she how she views the female gaze and how other narratives and other stories and media can sort of take on a more female gaze.
Yes. And like Kiki said, like not everything made by women is the female gaze. Like that's a very important thing to remember. And I definitely think, and this is people have different opinions on this. I respect people's opinions, but I definitely think that just like female directors can tap into the male gaze. The best example I can think of, the straightforward example, is Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman, Chris Pine's nude bath scene. That's the male gaze. That is not the female gaze. That is the male gaze. It is engaging. It is sexual, and again, not bad. It's not a bad thing. It's the sexualization, sort of the objectification. He's kind of at the mercy of Diana Prince, who is viewing him in a curious and objectifying sexual way. That's the male gaze. But just like women can tap into the male gaze, men can certainly tap into the female gaze. I mean, we just talked about The Last Jedi for the past hour. That is directed by Rian Johnson. That is directed by a man. Joe Wright has made his entire career as a director around sort of presenting sort of a very feminine sort of perspective of the female gaze. I also think that even though this is kind of maybe not the female gaze and how we perceive it in a direct way, this is more abstract. Spike Lee, under like the way that he treats his female characters, the way that he prioritizes their emotions, it is incredible. It is beautiful. Chirac is a wonderful film. There's so many examples. Spike Lee gives Black women the respect and the time and the attention and the thoughtfulness that is so sorely lacking for them in film in general. So Spike Lee is another really good example of real care and time and energy and attention put into his female characters. You know, there's many examples like this. So I definitely think that male directors, the best male directors, can certainly tap into the female gaze. And so when people kind of say like, you know, oh, but it's directed by a man, it's like, well, okay, let's look at the film. Like, let's examine the film. And, you know, or, oh, well, it's directed by a woman. It's like, well, okay, let's look at the film, you know, and of course that, you know, going back to how strictly binary that is, you know, but it's a good jumping off point to kind of, there's so many ways that you can experience and sort of start, you know, your journey of understanding. But I think that you guys hit the nail on the head with starting with romance novels written by women, starting with, you know, like sort of, you know, like tent poles of feminine gaze, so few that we have, but the ones that are there, and then sort of branching off and kind of making your own journey and sort of developing your own perspective on this theory, because everybody has different thoughts on it, you know.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. This has been amazing and enlightening, and like I don't know, I've taken away a lot more than you guys probably have. So thank you for letting me do that. Let's go around the room real quick, and we'll have, if you guys have any final thoughts, but then also just let us know where we can find you and your amazing content, everyone. And I will go to Em first. Emrys.
Yes, we are predominantly a YouTube channel. You can find us at Girls with Sabers on YouTube. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram at Girls with Sabers. So come along and listen to us. Sorry, I'm not very articulate right now either. So it's been it's taken a while for me to find my English again. But yes, we would love to have you over at our channel.
Well, I mean, you had a whole live stream before this, and so I run out of speak as well. As soon as I log off here, I crumble and I turn into a little puddle for a little bit. So
came in with a puddle, so I apologize. I know there were times in this live stream that I was not very articulate and I didn't get to the point. So just thank you for your patience, and thank you for discussing some very sensitive issues with me. I really appreciate everyone's patience and ability to just go there for a little bit.
No, I love it. Thank you for coming on. I will definitely have you on again, as well as the other half. And yeah, I love the collaborations. But yeah, how about you, Miss Eggy?
Oh yes. So you can find me on TikTok at Miss Eggy. I'm on Twitter at Miss Eggy28. I will say I do think it's kind of crazy how we did this whole podcast. We didn't even talk about the hand touch, guys.
Oh my god,
we forgot. We passed by us.
Hey, this is final thoughts. Go hand touch.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah. Well, you know, what's there to say? We talked about hands. We talked about intimacy. We talked about, you know, he takes the glove off. He's being vulnerable. There you go. It's pretty self-explanatory. Very intimate. My God, that zoom. I love like how Ryan does the camera. You see their fingerprints. I'm like, this is the hottest shit I've ever seen. Oh my God. Also, pour one out for my husband, who is in our living room and heard me scream phallus 50 times. So I'm going to have to explain some stuff to him when we finish live stream. But this was an absolute pleasure, Brandon. Thanks for hosting this topic and having us all come on here. Ladies, you are all legends. You are all just incredible. And I am so happy to have finally gotten to talk to all of you guys and really dig deep on this topic. So it was great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Always. Kiki?
Oh. So you can find me at Black PNW Lady on TikTok, or Cascadian Lady on TikTok. I have a backup because TikTok's been acting up. The only last thing I would say is that if you're thinking about the female gaze, I think you can also look to characters that maybe they themselves are not being filmed within the female gaze, but they appeal to it because that exists. And I know I've talked it to death tonight, but Bane from The Dark Knight Rises. I want to be very clear here. So on one of my accounts, I started to notice a lot of Black women in my comment sections, and then a lot of Black people. Whenever I'd make a post about Bane, they'd be like, I feel some kind of way about him. And so I finally made a post, and I was like, Black people who are attracted to men, how are we feeling about Bane? Are we inviting him over? Is he coming to the cookout kind of joke? And the amount of Black people who are attracted to men who were in my comment section acting up was killing me. It was the funniest comment section that I've had in years, or not years, but forever. And I think it's also important, just making spaces for people from diverse communities to have this as well. Because, we talked about appealing to we talked a little bit about bell hooks. And sometimes when we have these conversations, I always think, well, has anyone asked Black women, trans women, Indigenous women? because your culture might also shift how you're attracted to people as well. Your background might shift it, your cultural context of where you raised. So we've been talking today about the female gaze, but I think it's important to mention we've been talking about the American female gaze, the Western American female gaze,
Yeah.
which might not be the case from someone who might come from, say, India, or someone who comes from sub-Saharan Africa. So just being very aware of that and making sure that you're listening to other communities when they talk about what do they think the female gaze is.
Interesting. Now I have more stuff to ask. Awesome. I mean, I appreciate the whole thing is a learning process, and I enjoyed that journey.
And we're all still learning. Like everybody here is like still learning every day. Yeah.
We're all on the same road. Y'all are just up there. And I feel like when Ant-Man was like a little child and just like running like little tiny. That's how I felt. Anyways, Rhonda, how about you?
Yes, you can find me on TikTok at Rhonda Talks, TOKS, about books. And I am also on Twitter and Instagram, but don't do a whole lot on there. That's fine. And then my podcast is Pop DNA, and we are currently discussing A Wrinkle in Time. So any fans, go check that out. Final thoughts. If I could just echo everything that everyone else said for their final thoughts, because like those were all like things that I was thinking too. And also, I hate to bring this up at the end, but I think it's also worth looking into the heroine's journey, because that's going to be very entwined with the feminine gaze as well. I know we did kind of talk about heroine's journey a little bit, but I think there's a lot more to explore there for anyone who is interested.
It's definitely more to explore.
Yeah.
I think that, but that needs to be its own episode. So
yeah,
we'll get there though. We'll get there. Once again, thank you, everyone. Thank everyone in the chat. We have Saint Pat here, JJ, Cat Lady. Hopefully, we can get you on here on the high ground or on Dyad. I'm sorry you had to travel. Dan, the man in the chat, Forward into the Black, chatting. Element 7. We have Corellia Coffee Works and Brooke. Man, Brian with a beard is always awesome. We just have the best group of people hanging out and just talking this stuff. I know we went long. I apologize, but thank you everyone that stuck with us, and anyone who's listening to this in the future. I appreciate, love you all. You all very welcome to come back here. But for now, that'll wrap it up. Have a wonderful evening, and may the force be